Unfortunately, though, that still only gets us to 3. So I need Jagroot or Tiffany or Mike. Shad, or I guess Shadul, because I was thinking he wasn't going to be here, but he should be.
I thought Shagroot said that he could make it this morning.
He did, as did Mike.
And Mike was, if we didn't have a quorum, he would try and make it over.
The thing he was going to got postponed, so he said he would be here. I'm just gonna. Let me see if I can find. I've got Mike's in here somewhere. Just texting Tiger. That's 3. I think if we get one more, we should be good to go, but. So I guess if everyone is okay with it, we'll just hold for another couple of minutes. I know we're already running significantly behind, but if we are unable to get another, well, there's Mike. Hey, Mike. Can you hear us okay? Is reconnecting. Jagroot, I think, is logging back in. Some people saw, for some reason, when you logged into the meeting, it said it started at 7, so I think he got crossed up by that. So we should be good to go. Mike, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
We're all set.
All right. Well,
I had a lot of trouble, John, but I guess.
But you are not alone. It was,
okay.
I mean, that's why we're calling the meeting to order at 6:18 p.m.
Sounds good.
Had some technology and scheduling difficulties, but we have a quorum. I know Jagroot is going to be joining, but I think we could go ahead and get started.
John, do we need to start the recording?
Yeah, probably. Bob, can you start the recording? It's asking me, well, I'll send you a request. There we go. Okay. We have started the recording. Okay, so again, we're calling the meeting to order at 6:18 p.m. We are conducting this meeting remotely per the governor's guidance, and reflective of the inclement weather that we're having in Hopkinton today. So thank you everyone for your flexibility. Procedurally, again, just a reminder, we'll conduct any votes that we have in a roll call, given that everyone is participating remotely. I'll run through the agenda really quick. We'll have an opportunity for public comment. We have some invoices to approve, some minutes to approve. Then we will talk about the Mass Save Engineering Service Agreement, have a discussion about permitting in general and MEPA specifically. We'll get an update on the geothermal well, Hayden Row surveying, and some design updates, and then we will adjourn the meeting. So our first section is public comment. It does not appear, looking at the Zoom windows, that we have anybody here for public comment, but should anyone join later, we could revisit the possibility. So we will next move on to invoices for approval, and I had them up and then I had to go and look for all kinds of contact. Here we go. Okay, so we have 3 invoices in the packet for approval tonight. The first one is invoice number OPM-116-21 for Vertex in the amount of $33,333.33. Invoice number 95421-00.0-1 for Perkins Eastman in the amount of $381,676.95. And an invoice number 000007Y8608014 for UPS in the amount of $21. Total invoices tonight are a total $415,031.28. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the invoices?
Hey, John, I do. I'm just curious on the Perkins Eastman, is that all for services that have been rendered, or is it maybe for some future things as well?
Bob, do you want to clarify on that one, or Chris?
I can clarify. Recommended that for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the invoices as listed.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the invoices as written in the document.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jagroot, and we are roll call. I'm just reordering my Zoom window so that when I do roll call votes, I've got everybody in order. So we'll start with Bill.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes, sir.
Jagroot.
Yes.
Amanda.
Yes.
And I am a yes, so it is unanimous, 5-0. We next have meeting minutes for approval. So we've got we're doing a little bit of catch up here. So we'll start with the October 18th, 2023 meeting minutes. Did anyone have any questions or comments on these? Okay. Hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2023 as written in the meeting packet.
So moved.
A motion by Bill. Is there a second? Oh, Mike, I think you're seconding on mute.
Second, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion by Bill, second by Mike. Roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
Jagroot?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So those again are approved unanimously. Next, we have November 29th, 2023 minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
John, I think that Nancy and I were in attendance to the 29th and also the 19th of December.
Okay.
We're marked not present, so it's just an attendance issue. The content is fine.
Okay,
All right, let me fix that.
Any other comments or questions? If there are none, I would ask if we can make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of November 29th, 2023 with the amendment of attendance by Amanda Fargiano and Nancy Kavanaugh.
Sir, I move minutes of November 29th, 2023 as amended.
Okay, motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and a second by Jagroot. Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So those minutes are approved with the edit unanimously 5-0. Next, we have the meeting
And
minutes.
that
for
was a
December.
motion by Mike, right?
Yes, sir.
Motion by Mike,
Okay.
second by Jagroot. And then December 19th, we have the amendment for attendance on that one as well. And then are there any other comments or questions?
Sorry, Jen, I think Carol was also in attendance on the 19th.
Okay.
Nancy was marked both present and absent. So I think she was
That's
there
impressive.
and
That,
I was there.
that was a typo on my part.
no problem.
I wasn't sure if Carol, were you at the 19th?
I was, because I remember
Okay.
that was the shortest meeting in the history of the ESP.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
11,
it was.
11 minutes.
Yes,
All right, let me just make a note of that and I'll amend
Thank
that
you,
before I
Chris.
send it on to Georgette.
great.
So then similarly, I would seek a motion to approve those meeting minutes as amended.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Bill. Roll call vote. Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So those are also approved unanimously. And now we can move on from the administrative stuff to the rest of our agenda. The Mass Save Engineering Service Agreement. Chris, is this you?
Yep. Let me just take the screen, get my stuff out of the way. So as part of the Mass Save agreement that the committee has already entered into, we need to have a subsequent agreement with Mass Save to pick up the services through the rest of the project. So if you recall way back in time, when we entered into the Path 1 Mass Save initiative, which is the energy rebate program that they're offering for the project, we approved an engineering service agreement with Mass Save that would take the committee through the end of schematic design. We specifically broke out the remainder of design in the event that the funding vote did not pass. Obviously, the funding vote has passed, and so this is one of the core components that is necessary to excuse me. This is one of the core components that's necessary to move forward in the Mass Save agreement. There's a considerable amount of reimbursement that would come to the town as a result of this process. We had previously approved an engineering services agreement, and I sent a copy of this to everyone in the committee as part of the meeting packet. And what you're basically approving is Thornton Tomasetti's fees for the remainder of the project. So those fees are on, I think it's the next to last page or the middle page, page 3, where the remaining fees would be $3,000. That would be the town's cost, and $3,000 that Mass Save would contribute to this cost, because the town as the owner would only pay half of the fees for this proposal. So it's a total of $6,000 for their services. And what their services entail is what I had on the screen a moment ago, which is to do drawing reviews to ensure that we are on track to hit the EUI that is critical for achieving the incentives that we're looking to get. They did do a schematic design review as part of their services to date. They also are concluding their plug load study, which was the other service that was authorized. It's one of the additional services. And so this would be the check that the energy model is on track to meet the 25 EUI that's necessary in order to get the incentives from the state. And so we'd be looking to the ESPC to authorize this to move forward, which would be a motion to approve the engineering services agreement at a cost of $3,000.
Any questions on this one?
I guess I have a question for Chris. Not knowing who this Thornton Tomasetti is, do they have any kind of track record that you're aware of that, you know, will assure us that everything is going to be legit and above
Well,
board?
in this case, they're actually signed by Mass Save.
Okay.
Mass Save assigns the technical advisor when you
All right, so-
enter into their program, and they're a good firm. I think they may actually be one of Perkins' consultants as well.
All right, great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, you need a motion?
So small numbers, but this is included in the original budget estimate?
Yes, this would be part of the utility rebates under that section of the budget that we had that was recently approved as part of the project scope and budget agreement.
Okay. Then unless anyone else has any other questions, then yeah, I would seek a motion to approve the Mass Save Engineering Service Agreement.
I move that we approve the Mass Save Engineering Agreement in the amount of $3,000 to Thompson Tomasetti.
For a second.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Jagroot. A roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
Jagroot?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that also passes unanimously 5-0. And now we're moving on to discussion of permitting in NEPA.
So when we last met with you, or I think it was 2 meetings ago, we talked about MEPA and how MEPA fits into the Elmwood project. MEPA is the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. And actually, it was a week and a half ago, we met with Perkins and their consultant LEC to understand the MEPA process, what affects us as part of the MEPA process, and what we can expect as we move forward. We had errantly responded that we were concerned that a portion of Ashland might fit under the sort of trigger for MEPA. But as we dug deeper into this after the approval, it is actually a minority voting block of Hopkinton that is actually the trigger. We end up under MEPA's review for a couple of reasons. Starting with is the creation of 5 or more acres of impervious area. This includes both the pavement and the roof surfaces that are being introduced by our school that we're proposing. We are also 1 mile from an environmental justice community. And in this case, that environmental justice community is the section in yellow of Hopkinton that's on the screen. Because the project is state funded by the MSBA, MEPA's review, it opens up the review to the full scope of the project. So it's not just the impervious area, but MEPA gives state agencies the opportunity to comment on all aspects of the project when you enter into the process. The environmental justice community that we're looking at is identified as being 65% minority, but only 2% language isolation, and I'll get into what that means in a second. An overview of what that means in the initial stages is that we're going to have a pre-application meeting with the folks in the MEPA office on January 18th, which is this Thursday. As part of that, they're going to want to understand what notice we have already given to the affected community. And in this case, that affected community received all of the information that was shared with all of the town of Hopkinton in our various community forums in this publicly noticed meeting. And they'll also be informed when we go into permitting as part of the MEPA process. The goal here is to take a community that might otherwise be affected by a project and make sure that they're aware and they have the ability to comment on it. MEPA will give us credit for all of the work that we've done until this point, but they're also going to want to know that we have engaged directly in a targeted way with this community. And so there'll be there'll likely be mailers that we send out to the community, and there'll be and there'll be meetings that we'll have to hold with this community at some point in the next couple of months to make sure that we can document that we've given that community knowledge that this project is coming and provided them with an opportunity to comment on it. Another component of that is that they want us to reach out to any community-based organizations that may serve that specific community. And so that's one of the things that we'll be working with the town to see if there is any groups of that nature that we could also bring to the table to discuss this project. And we'll document all of that for the community because the MIPA has a map available on their website where they highlight which areas serve as environmental justice communities. And because this particular community is only 2% language isolation, that the majority of them do have the ability to communicate in English, we don't need to hold a meeting in the language or in a different language or send engagements to that community in a different language. We're able to conduct all of this in English. We would be required to do so if it was over 5% language isolation, but because it's only 2, it would be an option that the ESBC could choose to do. In terms of upcoming milestones, we have a ENF, which is an environmental notification form that will then lead into an environmental impact report. We're targeting filing that on April 1st, so they do require that we give them intent to file, which is about 45 days in advance of the filing date. So that will be about mid-February. And after our meeting this Thursday, we'll begin further discussions about how do we schedule a meeting in this community to solicit any comments they may have on the project. Specifically for the ESBC, we'll be looking to the ESBC to work with you to come up with targeted project information that we can send to the community, and included within that, we'll want to give them an opportunity to comment on the project so that we can understand any specific concerns that this community may have. We'll want to have a targeted public meeting in addition to the meetings that we've already held that specifically targets the folks in that community. It doesn't exclude anyone else from joining that meeting if they're interested in learning more about the project, but it is specifically to target the input of that community under MIPA. As we move forward, after we've submitted the ENF, we'll have a scoping meeting, and that'll be an opportunity for the project team, as well as any community organizations representing that group that we've identified, public agencies, and the public at large will have the opportunity to come and comment on the project. So in terms of what this means in real terms is that we'll have another public meeting. And we'll share the same information that we have shared to date, which is that this is a school that's going to benefit the community. We'll highlight a lot of the things that we've talked about, like the fact that we're going to overall reduce the number of buses that are traversing the entire community. And that's going to have important benefits like reducing diesel exhaust, as well as the opportunity to reduce traffic concerns in some parts of the community by moving the schools together. And with the ultimate goal of demonstrating that this school is as much a good thing for the people of the targeted community as much as it is for all of the people of Hopkinton. So the goal for today was to try and give you that information up front so that you had an understanding of where we're headed with MIPA. We'll have our meeting. I believe John's attending with us with the state on Thursday to understand more, and we expect that more information to come out of that. We are beginning some coordination meetings with Perkins to make sure that we are checking all the boxes and doing what's necessary to make sure that we can smooth out this process as much as possible. Because this is shared with all of the state, or with a wide variety of state agencies, that's where the uncertainty of timing comes. One agency could choose to take issue with a specific element of the project, and we'd have to address their concerns or respond to their concerns in some way. And there's certain timeframes that they have for how they share that information that are somewhat loose. And so we'll continue to be pushing for resolution on this while we get into the broader permitting of the project in general.
Any questions about MIPA and the process that we're going to be led through here.
Hey, John, I do. Chris, I'm not sure I understand who the affected community members are. It's Hopkinton residents only, and is that true? And number two, how many people are we talking about?
I don't have the convenient thing that says how many people we're talking about in front of me. What I can tell you is that they identify them by census tracts. So it's a lot of it is census information to identify groups that might not otherwise, per state policy, have a say on what happens to their communities. And a lot of MIPA centers around making sure that you don't place undesirable buildings in the bad part of town. To sort of paraphrase it. So if I wanted to come in and introduce a drop shipment warehouse that was going to have thousands and thousands of diesel trucks coming in and dropping stuff and put it right next to all of this community's houses, they want to make sure that the community has a means to say, well, we want to be notified that that's going to happen, and the state can review it and make sure that you're not going to put this giant plant of negative uses right in my backyard. In our case, we're getting, we're triggering the same provisions because we have a very large building. And so the trigger becomes, because it's 5 acres or more, they want to make sure that the that census block, which has been identified as being 65% minority, has not been marginalized in the discussions that led to this project moving forward.
Okay, one quick follow-up. So the assumption is this is geographic based because you have a map, but it's not. It's actually economic based or census based?
I believe it's census based.
Okay.
If I drop out of here, there's more information that I can bring up. If you bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing while I do this in the background. I went back and forth on whether or not I should prepare to put the full MIPA thing on the screen or not. At the last second, I said, no, I won't need this.
Yeah.
Well, I think my major concern, once I find out more information, is what authority do these citizens and or all of these government agencies have on this project?
They have the ability to have their comments addressed. So it's wide ranging, and there's a significant number of things that can come up from this. So this shows their population growth over the course of the census. It's about 13,000 people as of, I think, 2000. And their population in 2010 was about 14,925. So that's the trigger. But where the comments really come from is less this community, and it's that you've opened it up to all of the state agencies that receive notification on MIPA. And so within this, you have a MIPA distribution list, and this highlights the various agencies that get the opportunity to comment. So you might get the DEP might say, oh, you're destroying a lot of trees there. How are you going to mitigate this concern? And our response to them might be, we're managing water that currently floods to other locations in a different way, or we're avoiding wetlands in the area. And that's the comment that we respond to. The DOT might review it and say, we'd like more information about the traffic light, or they might say nothing. And in discussion with LEC, what we learned is that sometimes they comment and sometimes they don't. They commented that the Department of Transportation is less likely to comment than some of the other groups. Mass Historical Commission might say, hey, did you check whether or not that house that you're tearing down is historic? We'll respond that we did, and that might be the end of their comments. So it's a whole layer of the state getting the opportunity to comment on this as a check on forcing development upon people who might not otherwise have the ability to comment.
Thank you.
So, Chris, this 14,000 member community must extend beyond Hopkins because we only have a little bit less than 20,000 people living in town.
I think that might be the that might be what your, I got to go back to the page. That might be what the community as a whole was. And so
Yeah.
that percentage, that census block within the entire community is 65% minority.
Okay.
So, Chris, the yellow that is outside of Hopkinton on the map is not, we don't have to communicate with Holliston and Upton. You said it's just the piece of yellow that is within the map, within the Hopkinton.
Correct. So I'll bring it back up on screen here. So you can see it's a 1 mile radius from the extent of our project. So the nearest point of our project crosses into that portion of this block. So that identifies the environmental justice community, as it's called within the law, that is affected by this project. If we suddenly were bringing more diesel trucks to the building that weren't school buses, then in some cases it does increase that to 5 miles, but we don't hit that trigger as part of this. If it was 5 miles, then it would affect multiple communities around us. So right now we're just focused on residents of Hopkinton, and it's certainly to the project's benefit that we've already done extensive outreach to all of the residents of Hopkinton and have already done targeted outreach in certain areas of this community with the meeting that John and Shagroup put forward in that community. So we'll continue to identify the right people to reach out to. We'll likely develop some pattern of mailers to make sure that everyone, not just the voters, have been reached about the benefits that the school brings to the town of Hopkinton.
Bill, just to add one more thing about MEPA. At the end of the process, it is an approval. So it is a permit that we're getting from them. So they have some teeth.
And so essentially the satisfactory answers of all of those agencies' questions would drive us being able to get that permit.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can make us, they can request or / make us do certain things as long as they fall within the boundaries of their jurisdictional rights.
Okay. All right. Any other MEPA questions?
Chris, how do you document that this community has been has been informed?
So we're going to start. It's one of the things that we're going to talk about on Thursday with the folks that we talked to. We're starting with the local action letters that were included in each of the 3 submissions that we made as part of the feasibility study process. When we actually have the targeted meeting, we'll do a couple of additional things that we haven't previously done. One will be to send out a mailer that targets the folks who live in that specific area of town. One will be to take attendance at whatever meeting we hold so that we have a name and an address for everyone who comes to the meeting. And another strategy that we'll do is we'll be able to share all of the things that we've done to date to make the project, to inform the community about the project. So that'll be sharing the slides with the state that we've already shared about how we developed the project. It'll be sharing the information and feedback that we get in terms of comments. So if we send out a mailer and we have a link, if you have comments about this, please send them to, and we get 0 comments, we'll share that with them. If we get 5 comments, we'll share that with them. If we get 500 comments, we'll spend a lot of time sorting through them and we'll share that and how we responded to them. So it's really the degree to which that community is willing to engage back is how you document it. And if you don't get much feedback, then you'd share that you didn't get much feedback and the steps that you took to get to that point.
Yeah, and my other question is, you mentioned that we can get credit for the forums that we've already conducted, but how do we document, for example, the one that we did at Legacy Farms? Would there be a benefit to taking credit for that, and how do we document that?
We will get credit for having done it. I think we would document it in the sense that, I mean, we rented the facility. So if somebody really wanted to prove it, but we would share what we shared at that meeting. We have the slides in the presentation that was shared at that meeting. But one of the points that LEC Perkins, permitting consultant, brought up is that while you get credit for having done good to get to that point, you don't replace the need for additional reach out. So so it's sort of like walking into the meeting and saying, look at all the things we've already done. And they'll say, that's great. We're so happy that you've already engaged. Now do it one more time.
Yeah, I agree. But what I was thinking is it better to tell them we've done 2 forums instead of 1? So maybe, I don't know.
And anything that we've done is valuable information to bring to them.
Right.
And we've done a considerable amount in terms of, and I don't recall if the Legacy Farms meeting was on the local actions letter, but if it's not, we can certainly highlight that as one of the things that we did do. And then a lot of this is working with the permitting authority, which is overseen by the MEPA office of the state, and addressing their concerns, just like you would with the planning board, just like you would with any other state agency, because we've always found that proactive engagement is always easier to move the needle in those permitting situations, as opposed to sort of responsive engagement.
Right. Yep.
So any other questions on MEPA?
And we'll
All right.
expect continued updates for this process throughout our subsequent meetings.
Yep,
I would
and we'll
think.
continue to work to sort of understand that. And that's right now we're meeting bi-weekly with Perkins' team to make sure that we're on track to do the to get the environmental notification form completed and to get all the components of that, and also work towards getting the environmental impact report. And one of the suggestions from LEC was to do what they called an expanded environmental notification form, because that allows you the option to do a single environmental impact report for all of the agencies, so that you don't get bogged down by multiple resubmissions. So moving on, we just wanted to update the committee on a couple of upcoming site activities. Dan and I are going to meet the driller tomorrow afternoon, beginning at Elmwood and then moving over to for the Hopkins project, so that we can discuss logistics and scheduling for when they can do that work. The recent snowfall will give us an opportunity to see how well the land that was previously noticed as being somewhat wet in a few areas after we cut the road has frozen up, and whether they'll be able to manage the logistics of being able to get their drilling rig deep into the forest without needing potentially some additional mitigations to address some of the wetter areas. That's one of the key reasons that we're walking it tomorrow. And we're also hoping to use the information that we gain from tomorrow to understand what an appropriate drilling date would be to be able to start doing that geothermal well. The other upcoming site activity is we've circulated letters to all of the affected residents so that we can begin to do the surveying specifically around Hayden Row Street, where we're planning to do the additional traffic improvements. So right now, these are still proposed traffic improvements, but one of the most important first steps is to get accurate site information. If you recall, we were using available site information to establish the potential impacts of the traffic improvements. So one of the things that we're looking at is getting information both about the current width of the street throughout the length of the area we're proposing to improve, as well as to understand the position of the front elevation of each of the affected houses so that we can accurately report on how far the intervention in the right of way will be to the front of their house. And we can understand those impacts as the traffic design moves forward. So those, we developed some letters with the town that have now been sent to all of the affected residents, and we're hoping that that work begins next week. Any questions on either of those two items? All right, well, with that, I will turn it over to Perkins to provide their design update.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So I'm going to share with you some plan refinements. In this case, I'll start with the fact that the plumbing code has changed since our SD submission. Actually, it was effective December 8th. And this basically established new requirements for plumbing fixture counts for both staff and students. And it also established some guidelines or kind of considerations, requirements around gender neutral toilets. So I'll take you through those. The next slide basically is just a simple diagram that shows the range of gender or basically gender options for toilets on the far left. Forgive the colors, but simple pink and blue for boys and girls is something that you can continue to provide. And there are requirements for how many fixtures you need for each gender. In the middle, we can see that there is the ability to trade off some gender-specific toilets or fixtures and provide gender neutral. The requirement in the code is that this must be done equally, so it must be done in twos. It must be done equal to girls and to boys. So that conversion really happens in pairs. There's also a requirement that to go this route, the gender neutral toilets, they don't necessarily need to be in this exact location, but they need to be, I believe, within 350 feet of the group toilets. And then on the far right, it shows the option to go entirely gender neutral. In this case, all the toilets, there were requirements so that the stalls are very different. Each stall would have locking and they would extend all the way down to the floor. So they're really privacy chambers. Within the gender neutral model, you're still required to have single user toilets, and you would need one for each gender neutral group bathroom. And those, I guess, that would need to be located within 300 feet of the group toilets. So in speaking with the district, with educational leadership, with the working group, the middle option is what is preferred, to maintain boys and girls toilets, but also offer up gender neutral toilets throughout the facility. And so I can explain how that's been modified in the plan. The next slide shows, I know everyone cannot read this specifically, but what we're looking at on the far left are the SD and prior code requirements. From top to bottom, it goes through the student fixtures required. Next block down would be the staff requirements. And then we also have auditorium or cafetorium, as well as gymnasium spaces. So we're calculating not only for students and staff, but for special events. On the right-hand side, we're seeing what's changed or what the impact has been. So if we look at the requirements for student toilets, where 1 per 30 student was required, you'd need one toilet for every 30 students. That has changed to 1 to 25. So conceptually, you would need more toilets, except that the provisions go on to say that at over 100 students, the requirement then drops to 1 to 50. What this means overall is that the required number of student toilets actually drops from the current code to the new code. The big change is really in lavatories or sinks, and that requirement has gone up very significantly. So where 1 for every 60 students would be required, the new code is 1 to 25. So that increases more than 100%. And does have a significant impact. What we found here is that as far as code requirements go, that would be 28 more sinks in this floor plan. I guess the fortunate thing to say is that we're really never designing to code minimums. We've designed with more toilets and more sinks than the original code required. And a lot of that is because we need to have them convenient. We didn't want students traveling to an entirely different wing in the building to use toilets. So since we have 3 floors and 3 wings, we have kind of small group toilets at the beginning of each one of those wings. And so our fixtures were kind of over the code requirement. The end result is that we will actually need to add only 12 sinks as part of the meeting the requirement. For staff, there was really no change to the toilet fixture count. There is an increase in the number of lavatories or sinks. Again, we were over the requirements to make those toilet rooms convenient to teachers. And I think the end result is we need 4 more sinks. So we're talking about relatively modest increases, but really they're impacted even further by the layout for gender neutral. So the next slide, I can take you through. You're looking at the left-hand side, a typical group bathroom that we're looking at. You can see there's boys and girls. They have the shared sinks, and there's kind of an image of one version of those sinks that are outward facing, not actually in the corridor. They're still kind of recessed off the corridor. But this is something that came about during COVID. It's something I think we presented at prior meetings, particularly at this age. It's kind of good to have the sinks out and encourage hand washing and making it more convenient without even having to use the bathrooms. So this is the model we're looking at. And because we are looking at also gender neutral, we have found locations nearby where we can have the single user gender neutral for students as well. So in this plan, we're looking at all 3 floors, first floor on the left, second floor, and then third floor on the right. The red squares that you see are staff toilets, and we have 6 on the first floor, 4 on the mid floor, and 4 on the third floor. Pink and blue are the colors, and there's numbers in each one of the boxes that show you how many toilet fixtures that we had for each one of those rooms. And then yellow are gender neutral. And as you look at, this was the schematic plan, you can see there already were a bunch of gender neutral, and that's really because 2 of them on the far left, for example, are in the nurses suite. So we don't have a boys and a girls, they're really just 2 toilet rooms that can be used however the nurse sees fit. In the middle of the first floor plan, you can see another yellow square, and that's actually on all 3 floors. That is actually for a special needs classroom. So it's 1 toilet, it's provided for convenience and directly accessible off of that special needs space. So in a way that's neutral. And there's also one on the first floor on the far right. You can see it, it's actually in the stairwell of the middle wing, or it's underneath the stairwell. And that one's provided specifically to provide some option for students that are out at play, outdoor learning, or for recess. So that's just a single toilet. It's gender neutral, and just, I guess, for really emergencies if needed. The next slide shows you how things were changed. So in all of the pink and blue group bathrooms, we've reduced, that are highlighted here, we've reduced the fixtures, the toilet fixtures, by 1 each. So 1 male and 1 female in each one of these locations. That's 8 toilets that we've removed from the scope. But then we've added the yellow squares, which are the gender neutral toilets. So we've added 12. So it's not, it still is an add overall, but really we've been able to mitigate the impact and then provide the toilet room model that is preferred by the district. The next slide.
And just one point to make here, we had always talked about having single user toilets in the building. What really necessitated this change is a code change that arrived on December 8th. And that code change on December 8th codified exactly the way in which you need to provide gender neutral toilets as part of the Mass State Plumbing Code. And so this is in response to that.
Yeah, and the one thing we can continue to look at is among the other toilet rooms here, is there a way to even reduce a few more fixtures so that we're offsetting the increase in plumbing fixtures? For now, we don't think we should be doing that. There's kind of a critical mass. We really don't want the toilet rooms getting hopefully less than 3 fixtures each, because there are accessibility issues and maneuverability issues when the toilet rooms get too small. But this is something that we can look at when the next cost estimate comes in and if we need to tighten up. But any questions on this part of the presentation? If not, I can move ahead to one more slide and show you another modest plan change. The circle that's shown on the far right, 3rd floor, actually represents a little bit of a consolidation. In the previous plan, if you just go back one, Chris, for a second, you can see that it's a white box, but you can see that the room, the STE room in that corner pokes into the gymnasium. At the time, we were kind of working with the square footage requirements and the layout. We have a firewall on the other side of that STE room. So that room happens to be really locked, pinned between a rock and a hard place. So this forced us to do a little bit of an overhang into the gym. Not that that wouldn't be acceptable, but it comes at a cost because it's a complication in the structural layout. So if you go forward again, Chris, what we've done is we've actually swapped some reading and I believe math rooms, specialist rooms, to be located between the gymnasium and that firewall. They actually fit there quite well. And we've bumped the art and the science and technology rooms down 1 room each. The room at the bottom where the arrow starts, I don't know if you can circle that, Chris, where the arrow, yeah, right there. That one was able to get a little bit bigger because the spaces that were there previously weren't as big as an STE room by taking some of the corridor space. So this little move is actually more efficient. We think it works better, and it definitely saves some of the structural complications, very modest, but some structural complications that we had in the plan. This will trigger, which really happens on most every job, a resubmission to the DESE for special education space. And that happens on most jobs because the way they've stated it is there's any change in the plan, and there's always changes from schematic design to construction documents that we need to resubmit. So we should be able to do that. We're not changing how well special ed rooms are dispersed. We're not changing the program size. We're not changing the ability to get daylight or views. So we don't anticipate this will be a problem. Any questions on that? If not, I'll move into the fun stuff. So as we start to look at the interior and design development of the rooms and the spaces, we've got it laid out with some good planning and programming, breakdown of scale, but we're always looking for some inspiration, looking at the context for which we're in. This is, a beautiful site, part of a campus, a woodland area. And really, when we start to just think about Hopkinton in general, there are so many abundant natural resources, wonderful parks and woodland space. There's biodiversity in the landscape. And so it's natural for us to then maybe seize on that and say, well, there's an opportunity here. Maybe as we think about how the school is organized or how colors may change to help break down the scale, that we can use some of these and create a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of fun within the school. These things can be really used for the sake of wayfinding and identifying, hey, that's my neighborhood. I'm in the woodland zone and our colors are a certain green. So this is really just an opportunity. We're not saying this is set in stone, but we're starting the process here, and I'll share in a minute how we plan to engage teachers and educational leadership into this process. But we think there's a lot of richness here with the natural landscape, the desire to connect to outdoor learning and outdoor spaces, looking at the small neighborhoods and really kind of the corridors that connect them as almost trails. And this can also be used as teaching tools and learning exercises long-term within the school. So even just taking things like the floor level changes that occur within the school, that's a matter of topography. And so some of the things that we can build in are little cute clues or little bits of information into the plans or into the design or into the display, so that students and teachers can pick up on this and actually kind of work it into the curriculum. Part of what we're going to be doing with teachers is mining and listening into what happens at each one of the grade levels. What is the curriculum? What is the teaching and learning that's happening, and how can this building support that? So that should be exciting. Next slide shows a hint at how this might start to be interpreted. We look at meadow, forest, and marshland as some of the biodiversity. We know that the gymnasium is a large open space. It also connects to the fields outside, so it might be a metaphor for meadow. We know that in the middle of the school, the media center is actually a 2-story space, so is the lobby, and there's a verticality to that that may be something that is reflected as kind of a forest feel or theme. And then the lower portion of the building into the cafeteria is could be marshland, and maybe some of the indoor out connections or trails lead to actual wetlands learning. And some of the bioretention and rain gardens, some of the landscape design that'll be used to manage water can be kind of somewhat connected to these spaces. So these are just thoughts for now. None of this, we're not actually making decisions. We're just seeking inspiration. And again, we'll collaborate on how this takes shape in the building. I can move on and show just some interpretive and example ideas. The next slide was just a sketch from one of the staff. Actually, Peter developed the sketch. So this would be a section cut through the lobby, where you're seeing the main stair on the right-hand side. When you walk in the main lobby, you see the 2-story media center space, and that's what the window is that you're looking at straight across. You also can see straight out, through the stair to the outdoor learning. So it's really kind of a nice space connected indoor out. If this were a woodland theme, we can trade off acoustic ceiling tile for acoustic clouds, the green circles that might sort of reflect tree canopy. And we can also use some graphics and other things to kind of help kind of reinforce these design ideas. None of this represents an increase in scope. What we're doing is trying to take the palette and materials and kind of budget that we have and translate it. The idea is that we're going to continue with all the material types that we've discussed earlier for the sake of durability, maintenance, and cost effectiveness, and kind of carry them through the school. The next slide shows you some examples, maybe built inspiration. A couple of these are schools that Perkins Eastman worked on, but where woodland themes can be interpreted, whether it's in graphics that are applied to the window or to walls, or in overhead acoustic clouds that can be shaped and kind of be a little bit of fun within the design. Next slide shows some just sort of corridor patterns and opportunities. I know the Marathon School really played up the headwaters of the Charles and the Echo Lake and the Charles River, and has some kind of similar wavy lines that lead through the school.
Good.
Next slide. This is a preliminary look at a section through that main lobby. So on the left-hand side, we're seeing the vestibule, the entry vestibule into the school. Still early in the development, but there would be a window, probably larger than what we're showing, that would be right into the administration. So this would be a secure vestibule. We're showing that we might take the outside materials in just to the vestibule, because this is a space that gets a lot of moisture and temperature differentials. So bringing those outside materials in makes some sense. And then as you continue inside, what is the base of the building, which is a different type of brick, would then become the porcelain tile as a wainscot inside the main lobby. And then again, this is a look at, what could happen with the ceiling, what could happen with the window wall into the media center. Next slide, I think, shows a look at the cafeteria. This is the volume of space that we have to work with. And you can see, looking straight ahead, We have the stage. The stage actually has a window wall on the back. So during cafeteria, during the daytime, that provides some of the visual relief out. During performances, a curtain could be pulled. But we're also bringing in daylight from above. Here, I think in the budget, we talked about having wood clouds overhead just for the center portion. And instead, we thought we might be able to do exposed structure, acoustic deck, some acoustic treatment, and use some of that wood surface or wood look to dress up the proscenium, to make the stage kind of a little bit more prominent, but kind of having fun. Graphics can be applied, of course, to wall surfaces to reinforce the theme. And then I think the last slide is the gymnasium as far as the interior renderings. So what we're looking at here is the volume of space. You can see on the far left, second floor, that's the mechanical space. Below that are storage and the gym offices, and then they lead out to the gym. Pretty open space. We have some glass that catches treetops, be a nice space, and just a little bit of glass down low that can provide visual relief. Here with the theme of meadow, it might be that the wall pads around the gymnasium pick up on greens and yellows and kind of have a mixture rather than just one solid color. I think I mentioned this also includes acoustic CMU blocks, so very durable material, but the majority of it is made so it also has some acoustic properties that are conducive inside of the gym. And we can come back to this, but the very last slide I have is just working with Carol and with David about a plan to move forward. We're putting together a group of maybe 12 or so participants. That'll include the superintendent, assistant superintendent, principal and assistant, and a teacher from every grade level, as well as from both schools within the related arts programs to help collaborate on the start of this kind of concept, but really kind of make it more personal, get some engagement with the teachers, really try to connect it to the curriculum and teaching and learning what's happening. We see this as an opportunity to better connect to indoor and out, to support the curriculum, to use the building and the site as teaching tools, help with the wayfinding, but also reinforce that small school scale and feel. It can be used to help inform color and material choices. And of course, we want it to be timeless aesthetic. We don't want this to be any kind of trendy colors or graphics that, kind of wear out after a while. So that's where natural themes are good. And it should reflect Hopkinton. It should not be just a designer's ideas. It really should be place specific. So we're hoping with this group, we're going to have at least 4 meetings we have charted in February and in March, where we'll start with where we are now and then brainstorm on ideas that can connect and reinforce some of these goals and objectives, and then go through an iterative process of exchanging ideas and examples before we settle on what these themes might be. So I know that's a lot, more words than I wanted to say, so sorry. We can go back if anybody had questions or thoughts or issues on any bit of this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. Any questions on all the design updates that Bob just presented?
Not a question exactly, but I did want to share that the school committee is opening up the naming process starting at our meeting this week. So I know there can sometimes be a connection between the name and the design. We are where we are with timing, but I want to let you know that that's we are opening that up.
That's great. I think that'll be an opportunity and can help kind of steer where this goes. At the very least, we know that throughout the school, we think there's a lot of opportunities to connect to history or, depending on the naming, a little bit of research into background. And we can provide that in a number of ways, including, areas of display dedicated to teach and learn and to celebrate whatever the context is. So that's awesome.
Well, Bob, thank you for that update. It's nice to see just the continued design refinement and how everything's coming together and really get more and more of those pictures of what it's going to look like. So we do appreciate that. That is, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, the end of our agenda of items for tonight. Probably the one thing we have left to do is just figure out when we were going to meet again. So I would look to Perkins or Vertex for guidance about when we think that makes
I
sense.
believe we have something on the books.
Oh, do we? Oh, great.
Just double checking.
February 6th is what I.
Yeah, February 6th is our next
Okay,
scheduled
awesome.
meeting.
Okay, great. Even better then.
Hmm.
Well, hopefully the weather will cooperate and we'll be able to do that actually in person. Again, thanks everybody for your flexibility tonight, although thanking you, probably happy not to have to come out of the house. Appreciate just dealing a little bit with some of the challenges we had technology-wise. But if there is no other business, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Bill, second by Jagroot. Roll call vote. Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So we are adjourned at 7:19 p.m. Thank you to HCAM for adjusting quickly on the fly to be able to do this remotely. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you.